This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Good morning to fans of the top seed in the Eastern Conference and nobody else. Nobody else.
Clay might have disappeared here for a second, unless it's my feed. So I'll pick it up from here. Clay, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm wondering because Ira may
I think
be
we're having a
little
bit of technical difficulties today. Let's see. I will go over.
Wondering which one of us.
Big O, are you there?
I am
Which
here.
one of us?
By the way, Clay is here. It's you having technical difficulties.
Okay, yeah, I just went to my Ethernet cord, so hopefully that'll pick up. So am I okay now?
That's a good point. That's a good point, Clay. We pick on your ass all the time because your internet sucks. So for once, Ira's internet has failed him, or he's all confused or something. Are you good, old man? Are you good?
I went to the Ethernet cord. Is this better now? Are we okay, or should I go to the phone?
You are fuzzy, actually.
Really?
Yeah, you're not normally your GQ looking self. I mean,
you are a little
fuzzy.
I plugged in the Ethernet cord, so I might even have to go to the phone today. I don't know what's going on with the home internet here.
Do you see Clay? Do you see Clay now?
I see Clay. Hi, Clay.
Okay, now you don't. Now you won't see me.
All right, good. So at least you're seeing me. Hopefully, you're able to come back and hear me. Okay. But what I want to start off with this stuff is kind of what O mentioned before we even got here, and Ira, I'm assuming you can hear me okay. But view from the top, the Miami Heat are the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, and you look back at what this team did throughout the regular season, and I fully understand that we're going to ultimately judge a professional sports team in the United States based on what happens after the regular season is over, based on what happens in the playoffs. But Ira, I think you can add as much perspective to this as anybody outside of that building. What has this team gone through this season, and where does it measure in I mean, how many years have you covered the Miami Heat and the NBA in general, and where do you put this season relative to the number of the level of adversity and everything that this team had to go through just to get to this place?
Well, I think, first of all, and Clay, if you're having trouble hearing me or I'm a little too fuzzy, let me know and I will switch to the phone line.
You're beautiful again. You're beautiful.
Okay, well, you know what? Hopefully I went that Ethernet. Someone give me a hi sign or send me a text or whatever, and I'll use the phone line if I have to. When I look at this Miami Heat season, what I see is, and I wrote a story about this on Sunday in my Sunday column at sunsentinel.com. This just became a story this season of perseverance and pushing through adversity and really to finish the season as the number one seed and accomplish what they did, I think is just remarkable. I think it's just a matter of, again, like I said before I went a little fuzzy, and I can get fuzzy at time at my age, like Big O said in the pregame show here. I just think we need to appreciate what Eric Spoelstra accomplished and also what the quote-unquote other guys accomplished. Everyone talks about the stars in this league. So, yes, we expected a Jimmy Butler season, a Bam Adebayo season, a Kyle Lowry season. We were surprised a little about a Tyler Hero season. But, Clay, you know what made this season to me? That for a month we debated about Omar Yurtseven. For a month we debated whether Max Strus should play over Duncan Robinson. For a month we debated whether Gabe Vincent was good enough, wasn't good enough, and then whether he was good enough to be in the playoff rotation. Caleb Martin, we debated, how are we going to get this guy from a two-way contract? He has to play in the playoffs. Think about that. We went through a Miami Heat season that we had talking points about Max Strus, about Gabe Vincent, about Caleb Martin, and about Omar Yurtseven. Look, none of those guys might impact the playoffs in a big way. Matter of fact, if the Heat have it their way, probably won't. So enjoy what they did to get you to this point. The thing about the NBA playoffs is you still have to get here in order to go somewhere. And I think the Heat should almost like have a night or a moment before the playoff opener Sunday, 1 p.m., FTX Arena, and thank the other guys. And like almost like this, like you do in TV, Clay. And then we now join our regularly scheduled program already in progress with the Jimmy and the Kyle and the Bam and the Tyler show. So I think it's a season about the little guys, and we should be appreciative of that, I think.
And I think it's a great point. And look, I think anybody who knows you knows that you're not Mr. Roses and Sunshine all the time, right? I mean, I think that's what's
I try to keep perspective. Yes.
you try to keep it. Yeah, but I mean, look, you're critical when necessary, and if you're a homer, you might think overly so at times. But I think that gives you the credibility to come on here and say, look, don't just let this slip. Don't just look at this and say, hey, look, that was fun. Now let's get ready for. I mean, and look, I'm probably going to be right there if they end up getting knocked out of the first round or swept in the second round, saying, what went wrong? What a disaster. How do you go back and fix this? How do you make sure this doesn't happen again? And yet, I do think you're going to have to remind yourself, and you as in the general you, that, man, the fact they even got here, let's appreciate this 82-game season. You mentioned all those things, but I mean, Mario Chalmers. Man, they can get Mario Chalmers another championship ring.
I don't think that's how it works, Clay, but
it should. I mean, come on, they give the championship rings. Everybody gets championship rings, right? Didn't they give you a championship ring? No. You look back at what this team had to do just to survive 82 games, just to put together a roster to play some of these games. I mean, when they signed Mario Chalmers, I remember the list of players that they were going to have to roll out there. I was seriously wondering if they may even start him, and he ultimately didn't even end up playing. But it was just when you were looking at the players that they had and who they may end up losing because of close contacts. And look, I know everybody wants to talk about the matchups, and we're going to get to all of that.
Sure.
It's just remarkable when you look back at these 82 games and like little things hit you like, oh, that's right, they had to sign Rio. Oh, that's right, they signed Kyle Guy. Oh, and he actually contributed. Oh, Victor Oladipo pretty much won them the game in Toronto. I mean, there's just so many things that you look back.
I never forget Chris Silva along the way also. But one thing we're great in sports is we compartmentalize and we move on. And Clay, as you know, I'm sure you were like me last night, riveted to your TV. So I almost want to start with this. I know this has been a talking point on the show. And I know some people have been calling me really bad words, including one that begins with a P and indicates I'm soft because I was afraid. I was concerned about the Brooklyn Nets. And when I was watching that first quarter and they went up 20 and they showed Kyrie at his best, even though Durant wasn't at his best, I still exited that game glad they're not playing the Nets. But I also, Clay Ferraro, watched the second half and did like you and Orlando Alzugaray did, and did say to myself for a few times, they're not that good. They let this nominal opponent in Cleveland, without their best big man in Jared Allen, get within 4 points late in the game when they should have crushed them like a bug. So yes, on one hand, I am glad the Heat are not playing the Nets. Yes, you were right. They weren't who we thought they were. But on the other hand, Clay, let me ask you this, and I want the honest Clay Ferraro opinion here, okay? Are you glad? You can be honest here, just you and me and a couple of people watching out there, maybe hopefully more. Smash the like button here. But is there part of you that are glad that we don't have to worry about the Nets? Or are you, because I know you're Mr. He-Man tough guy at the gym, did you want to flex against them and knock them and crush them like bugs? Honestly, from when you saw the Nets go up by 20 in the first quarter, when you saw the Nets almost slither and lose all of it, but you also saw greatness in Kyrie. What's your takeaway from the Heat not facing the Nets in the first round of the playoffs?
The same as it's been. Don't make the road tougher than it has to be. And it's not that you fear the Nets. It's not that you fear anybody. But look, man, I don't want possession for possession games late, and the other team has the best player in the world. And oh, by the way, they also have one of the top 5 scorers, individual scorers in the NBA, in addition to him. I don't know. Maybe even top 5 isn't doing Kyrie Irving justice when you're talking about purely a bucket getter.
As an offensive player, yes.
Now, do I think that the Heat's team defense in particular and their ability to turn that into offense, do I think that they could win that series? Do I think they get to the point where they're not in possession for possession games against that team? Yeah, I do. But why take the chance on doing that, then playing, I don't know, Philadelphia, and then having to play Boston or Milwaukee? You're removing one of the contenders.
I agree with that. So, as a matter of fact, I want to put it another way here also. So today you're putting together your Easter baskets for your daughters, okay? So I want you to give me two baskets. The baskets of 4 teams you would prefer not to play until the Eastern Conference Finals, and the basket of 4 teams you would prefer in your half of the bracket. And I contend that really, except for one team, the Heat shoved 3 teams to the other side of the bracket. So if I were to tell you, Clay Ferraro, forget about seedings, forget about final record. We are drafting our own playoff pool here. We're sitting down. We're the NCAA committee in Indianapolis, and we're coming up with our Eastern Conference bracket. What 4 teams, if you could name them, would you not have wanted to be on the Heat side of the bracket?
Number 1, Milwaukee, and it's not really close. And I by the way, I've said that for a while because I do feel like as much as Milwaukee kind of made it to the finish line and they're still that team because they won the title last year.
They're a team. Yes.
And look, I think Giannis gets you to the finish line. Giannis is incredible for 46 minutes. And by the way, he's actually hit his free throws in the clutch in points as well. But to me, it's Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday that make that team an absolute nightmare.
That team is a team, as much of a team as any team. So that's 1. Okay, that's in the bad. You don't have to tell me or your wife, but that's in the bad daughter's basket. Okay, so that's 1. Give me your second team you wanted to avoid.
She just happens to be homesick, by the way, so we won't call you.
I'm sorry.
People. We wouldn't call her that. So yeah, I mean it's Milwaukee, and there's some separation between Milwaukee, and then I would say second right now. I go back and forth between Boston and Brooklyn. I think that Boston.
Matter of fact, I'm going to interrupt you here because I always do that. So let's say those are your next 2 eggs in there. Okay, so you're saying Boston and Brooklyn in the bad basket, rancid eggs. Bird flu. We got to kill them damn birds. Okay, the point I'm making is if I could have put 4 teams in the I don't want them in my half of the bracket, I would definitely put Milwaukee in there. Based on what they did against the Heat in the season series, I would put Boston in there. They're coalescing. Sorry, Jimmy, I'm going to use that word. That's another team I would put in there. We've talked for weeks now. No matter what Big O says, he's drinking his cafe con leche now. He's on the side. I would put Brooklyn in there. And I would say, obviously, if I could kick maybe Philadelphia over to bad basket, to sick daughter's basket, I would put that in there also. And I would like the Bulls. But Clay, the Heat did the right thing by the basketball gods. They played the schedule out. They played, Jim Mora, the older one, said, to win the game. They wound up, except maybe for one team in their bracket, with the draw where you are avoiding 3 of the real problematic teams to the Eastern Conference Finals. Yes, in the second round, if the Heat play Team A, and we'll get to this later in our show, we'll talk about the play-in. The next round, they would play the winner of Toronto-Philadelphia. And I'm not so sure it might not be Toronto. Based on how they are coached, how they are playing, and the fact that they don't have James Harden. So I could see that happening also. But if they get Philly, that'll be tough. Joel Embiid is maybe going to be the MVP by the end of this week or next week when they announce it. But the way the bracket that the Heat got, and I know Eric Spoelstra, when we go to practice today, he ain't biting on that. There is no way in hell Eric Spoelstra is going, oh, man, we got all the crappy teams. We're in great shape here. You know he's not going to say that. But you know when he was sitting there with Caron Butler and Chris Quinn and Malik Allen and Eric Glass and Anthony Carter and Octavio De La Grana, and they were game planning for the playoffs, which teams they wanted shuffled off to the side. The Heat got a really good Easter basket. They got the really colorful eggs. They didn't get those half pastel ones that still kind of look like a hard-boiled egg. I think the way this shook out and the fact that the Heat played for number 1, I don't think it could have worked out much better. The only better path for the Heat would have been to get maybe a Charlotte in the first round, a Chicago in the second round, and then deal with everyone else. But man, the way they came out of it, I think the basketball gods spoke. And they said, fine, if you guys want to play your games, Boston, and sit guys at the end, you get Brooklyn. And Milwaukee, if you think you're the be-all, end-all, we outsmarted everyone. We didn't play anyone in our last 2 games. That's fine. You got Chicago. A sweep, maybe 5 games, but you're the road team in the second round. And you're the road team in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Heat, Game 7, if the Miami Heat play a Game 7 in the Eastern Conference playoffs, it will be at FTX Arena. And if the Miami Heat play a Game 7 in the NBA Finals, and it's against anyone but Phoenix, Memphis, or Golden State, it'll be at FTX Arena. They're set up in really good damn shape. So you know what? Everything he said when I was fuzzy, my internet was out at the top of the show, screw it. It's about now. The Heat have too good of a path to screw this up.
Yeah, and that's why I said let's separate it, right? I mean, let's appreciate the regular season for what it was, and now we're looking ahead now, and we're saying, okay, based on how this thing shook out, you're right, man. The teams that we talked about avoiding, and this is what we talk about. Maybe the Heat, like in the depths of the building, they'll talk about this sort of a thing. But look, I will say this: I think there's something about this team that they're a little crazy. And they play better with that chip on their shoulder. So I do feel like the fact that, and this is crazy, and we're going to talk about this coming up a little bit later, when you look at the odds of who's going to win the Eastern Conference, they're fifth.
Yes.
They're fifth. And so like Vegas says, okay, yeah, you finished as the number 1 seed, but we think Milwaukee, we think Brooklyn, we think Boston, we think Philadelphia all have a better chance coming out of the East than you do. To me, I know the Heat are going to say they don't pay attention to that sort of a thing, but they know it. They know, and they perform better.
Oh, hell, it'll be on the bullet, and it'll be on the bulletin board in the locker room. Clay, you've been around way too long to know the old, we don't listen to that. We don't listen to outside noise. We don't care what the opponent says. We're not going to use that. Oh, bull crap. They'll use everything they can. The Heat are... Maybe I put it this way, might be the most disrespected number 1 seed in the playoffs since that Atlanta team with Korver, DeMarre Carroll, and Al Horford.
I'm glad you mentioned that team, by the way. I'm glad. Go ahead. Keep going, because I think there are a lot of differences between these two teams.
Right. And so I think you have to go back almost till then. Look, the NBA is a superstar league. When the NBA announces it's 15 players, all NBA, there is a very good chance, Clay, there will be no Heat player on that. So everyone's looking at the stars. Everyone's looking at, well, Milwaukee plays, Giannis is going to win it. When Boston plays, Jaylen Brown's going to win it. When Philadelphia plays, Joel Embiid's going to win it. When Brooklyn plays, Kevin Durant or Kyrie are going to win it. We can't say that about the Heat. Game 1, Clay, by the way, congratulations. You have courtside seats. We have upgraded you. So you're at FTX Arena. It's Sunday. It's 1 o'clock. Matter of fact, it's 3:15. The game's ending. The Heat have the ball. Tie game. 5 seconds left. Just called a timeout. Who's making and taking the winning shot for the Miami Heat? Who is Eric Spoelstra?
If I'm the coach, it's Tyler Hero. With Spo, I think it might end up being Jimmy Butler. But either way, I mean, I think it colors your point, though.
And you think it could be Kyle Lowry or Bam Adebayo possibly also.
Yes.
That's how people looking through this Heat prism. They know on all these other teams who the guy is. So when they're gambling and they're putting their bets down, they're putting it on the team, but only 5 guys play at a time. So they're putting it also on the guy. The Heat don't have the dude. They have a bunch of dudes. And I think that concerns people. But like you said, and I know you're referring to this, that Atlanta team had a bunch of kind of dudes. The Miami Heat, I think, have a bunch of, like Udonis says, a bunch of dogs, a bunch of those kind of dudes. I think that's the difference.
And like you go back to that Atlanta team, and I think when you look back at that Atlanta team that was the number 1 seed, you had a lot of scorers, and they were built sort of for the regular season, right? I think the thing with the Heat, and you saw this, by the way, in the 2 play-in games that we saw last night, defense matters a lot in the playoffs. And like I joked about this with, when Brooklyn scored 40 points in the first quarter, I said, oh, well, you don't have to play defense if you're going to average 160 points a game. But ultimately, look at the final score of that game. I mean, in a big way, the defense from Brooklyn ended up looking more impressive than the offense did. And then in the Minnesota game last night, I mean, that game, the Timberwolves were getting beat. That game was pretty much over. And they turned their defense on to a new – they were flying around like crazy. And so the thing this Heat team has that the previous disrespected number 1 seeds didn't, there's this toughness, this defensive mindset that matters in the playoffs. And look, I get it. It's a stars league, and we're going to go through the rest of the matchups as the show goes on. But Ira, to me, that's what separates this team from those previous built for the regular season type number 1 seeds that floundered, the teams that didn't have the stars. I see a little bit more of that Detroit Pistons team that ended up beating the Lakers.
Absolutely.
It was like synergist. Yeah. And that was another thing.
And to sum up this first segment, screw the wise guys, screw the odds. And Clay, you and I are flying out to Vegas after this, and we're going to kick some Hank Goldberg butt.
Let's do it. All right. So much more to get to on the show. We're going to talk about why we feel this way about this team. Also, what's changed with the Miami Heat? And there was a meeting that happened that led to what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. We're going to talk about that and a lot more right here on Inside the Paint.